Hey guys, it's Melanie. Welcome to my channel. Today I have day 10 of the Once Upon a Book Club Advent box, so stay tuned. So just a few days remaining in our Once Upon a Book Club Advent box. This has been so much fun going through. I'm really enjoying the stories. I'm really enjoying the gifts, and I hope you are too. I will link day 1 up here. If you haven't seen all of them, you can go back and start with that one. But let's get right into our story for today. Look, we only have this much left of the book. So today's story is Love Overdue by Wendy Waltrip. Oh, and it looks like we start out with our gift. It says, and this is highlighted, "To the girl who sits behind the circulation desks and reads when she thinks no one is looking. I blew out a breath and watched it fog in the frosty air. Who leaves a note in a book they're returning to the library?" So we open our gift right now. Okay, so here is day 10's gift. It feels like a book, so I'm guessing it's like the library book it was just talking about. Now, they do have 2 different kinds of boxes. If you don't know, this is the first year that they've done it. Typically their Advent box has been just adult books, and this time they offered adult or YA. All of the other gifts are the same, but the books are different. So I think that the adult books are the ones that actually really go with the story, but they have come up with a YA book for it as well. So let's open this up and see what we got. Okay, so with the book, there's also this note here that says to open on page 171 as she unfolds the note. So that's like the next page in here. But the book that we have is 8 Days on Planet Earth by Kat Jordan. Never heard of this. Let's see. Ooh, it's purple with some purple foil font. This says, "How long does it take to travel 20 light years to Earth? How long does it take to fall in love? To the universe, 8 days is a mere blip. But to Matty Jones, it may just be enough time to change his life. On the hot summer day, Matty's dad leaves for good. A strange girl suddenly appears in the empty field next to the Joneses' family farm, the very field in rural Pennsylvania where a spaceship supposedly landed 50 years ago. She is uniquely beautiful, sweet, and smart, and she tells Matty she's waiting for her spaceship to return to pick her up. Well, of course she is. Matty has heard all of the impossible UFO stories for each of his 17 years, the conspiracy theories, the wild rumors, the crazy belief in life beyond the stars. As a kid, he searched the skies and studied the constellations with his dad, but all of that is behind him now. Dad's gone and Matty's stuck. But now there is Priya. She must be crazy, or high, right? She must be. As Matty unravels the mystery of Priya, he realizes there's far more to her than he first imagined. And if he can learn to believe in what he can't see, the universe, aliens, love, then maybe the impossible is possible after all." Sorry if you hear some noise in the background. Marty's doing stuff in the kitchen. Okay, let's get back to the story. "My fingers itched to unfold it, even though the odds of someone writing to me were lower than the book that I did sometimes hold under the desk during my shift. But I couldn't deny that my heart was pounding just a little bit faster with a strange clunk-a-clunk-a-clunk sound. No, wait, that was just Jess with the book cart. Come on, Mary, it's freezing out here, and Sam wants us to start shelving." I stuffed the paper into my jacket pocket and tossed the book into the cart. "I'm coming." "Finally," Sam exclaimed when we eventually got the cart back to the circulation desk. "I thought we'd lost you two. We've got carts to shelve and books to check in, and everything should have been done an hour ago." Jess and I exchanged a look, trying not to laugh. A middle-aged woman with 2 toddlers at home, Sam had even less patience than a kid on their birthday. "We're here now, boss," Jess replied with a salute. "And thank God for that. Mary, I need you to shelve the cart from yesterday afternoon, please. She waved in the general direction of the cart, and then seemed to remember my reputation. But for the love of rainbows and kittens, don't read the books. Actually shelve the books. Got it? I gave her my own salute and rolled yesterday's cart to the nonfiction section to begin. It wasn't until I was shelving a particularly large book that I suddenly remembered the note in my pocket. I glanced around the edge of the aisle, but Sam and Jess were both occupied at the desk. Satisfied no one was going to interrupt me, I sat down on my step stool and unfolded the note. So I guess this is where we can look at our note. This says, "To the girl who sits behind the circulation desk and reads when she thinks no one is looking, I am, but not in a creepy way. I always wonder what exactly could captivate you so much that you sometimes seem to forget where you are. I think about what world you might be exploring, and I wish that I could join you. I hope that didn't sound too stalkerish. I just really love reading too, and I think it's great that you found a job where you get to be surrounded by books. If you ever read this, maybe one day you could tell me which book made you laugh out loud last Tuesday. But I guess that will never happen because you have no idea who I am. And that possibly won't change anytime soon. Sincerely, someone who loves books and loves that you love books too." Okay, so back to this now. What's that? I yelped and leapt off my stool, my hands already raised to defend myself. Unfortunately, that gave Jess the perfect opportunity to snatch the note. "Some kind of love letter," she teased, but she fell silent as she started reading. I bit my lip and shoved my hands in my pockets. After what felt like forever, Jess looked up. "Mary, where did you get this?" I thought about lying, but I knew Jess would see through any lie in an instant. "It was in one of the books in the book drop." "Really?" She scanned it again and then waved it in the air like some kind of flag. "You have to write back." I snatched the note from her, shaking my head. "Absolutely not. It might not even be for me." Jess crossed her arms and gave me the look, the one that she'd been giving me for 9 years after she moved to town in 4th grade. "Who else reads at the desk?" "I don't know. Sarah might." "I can tell you from having worked with everyone that you're the only one who reads at the desk. That note is definitely for you." I stuck it in my pocket and picked up the book I was supposed to be shelving. "Even if it is, I'm still not writing back. Who knows who could have written it? It might even be some old dude." She rolled her eyes. "It might be. Or it might be a hot teen who could be your true love." I elbowed her and put the book on the shelf. True love doesn't exist. And anyway, don't you have a job to do that isn't annoying me? "Fine. See you in a bit." I waved as she headed back to the desk and then got back to shelving. But even as I tried not to think about the note in my pocket, a tiny part of me wondered if Jess was right. After that day, I did sort of forget about the note. When I got home, I put it on top of my dresser, but it soon got buried under the several books I was reading. It wasn't until my shift at the library about a week later that I remembered it, and only because I found another. "I know this is your favorite section, Mary," Sam told me as she rolled the cart up, "but we have the children's event this afternoon, and I really need you to finish shelving these books as quickly as you can." "Got it," I said, rolling the cart away. It was a pretty full cart, but I was one of our best shelvers, so I hurried through it at a decent speed. I only had 4 books left when I caught sight of something on the shelf that made me pause. "No way," I muttered. I lowered the book I'd been about to shelve and pulled out the book with another note sticking out of the top. It was the exact same book that had been returned with the note in it before, and now that I got a better look at the title, I realized it was one of my favorites. I glanced down the aisle, but I was alone, so I pulled the note out and started to read. "To the girl who wears a Mockingjay pen every day without fail. I know someone found my last note because it was no longer in the book when I came back and checked. I hope it was you. Since you didn't write back, I'll have to ask another question in the hopes it will entice you to start a conversation with me. What's your favorite part of working at a public library? From what I can tell, it seems to be the fact that you work at a place full of doorways to other worlds, but maybe it's actually the awesome food in the break room I'll never know about. Will you write back this time, please? Sincerely, someone who loves great books and also loves great food." I took a deep breath. There was no doubt about it this time. This mysterious person was writing to me. I did always wear a Mockingjay pen. and I was the only library staff member to do so, which meant that, just like in some of the romances I'd read, someone had taken a liking to me and decided to tell me anonymously. Maybe Jess was right, and this person could be my true love. Or maybe not, since I still didn't believe in true love. But at the very least, maybe this mysterious person and I could become friends. I shelved my last 4 books faster than I'd ever shelved before and practically ran back to the desk. Jess was checking books out to a mom with a wiggly kid when I got there, and I waited impatiently for her to finish. "What's up?" she asked after the mom and kid had left to head into the community room for the event. "I got another note." Her eyes widened, and I shoved the note at her before she could say anything. When she finished reading, she looked at me with a raised eyebrow. "You gonna write back this time?" "I think so, yeah." "Then let's do it." I blinked. "Now?" "But we have the event, and..." "Yes, now. I know you, Mary, and I know that if you put this off, you'll start overthinking it and never actually do it. It'll only take a couple of minutes." I bit my lip and then nodded. "Okay." Jess grabbed a piece of scrap paper while I found a pen. "How should I start?" "They always start with, 'To the girl who,' so you could do that." I nodded and started writing. "To the person who makes me feel seen." "Too much?" I asked Jess, and she shook her head. "Just right." "Thank you for your kind notes. At first, I didn't think you were writing to me, but now I see that it couldn't be anyone else. To answer your questions, I honestly don't remember what book I was reading when I laughed out loud, but it must have been good. And you guessed correctly, my favorite part of working in a public library is being surrounded by books. Sometimes I go home with a giant stack of books to read, even though my to-read shelves at home are very full. But you can never have enough books, right? Now I have a question for you. What's your favorite part of reading? I'll look forward to your next note. Sincerely, someone who loves working in a library." I looked up at Jess and she nodded. "Perfect. Thanks for your help." "Anytime. Now go hide that note in the book and hurry back because we're actually a little late for this event now, and I really don't feel like dying today." I grinned and rushed back to my favorite section as I slipped the note into the same book's pages and left just a corner sticking up. A smile escaped my lips. Hiding notes in a book made me feel as if I were a protagonist in a book of my own. To the girl who made me so happy when I found her reply today. I checked the book as soon as I got to work the next afternoon and was thrilled to find another note. Before my shift officially started, I quickly wrote another reply and hid it in the book. I probably had a leftover grin on my face when I walked into the break room because Jess caught my eye and gave me a knowing smile. I felt a whole lot less like grinning after my shift when my car started making a strange noise. I made it into my driveway, thankfully, but all the lights were off in my house, which meant that neither of my parents were home yet. I groaned and rested my head on the steering wheel. I knew nothing about cars. "Need some help?" I jumped and turned to look out the window. "No, thank you. I'm good," I said, because the smirking face outside was one of the last people on the planet I would ever want to help me. Eric Curtis laughed and pointed to his own car in the driveway of the house next door. "I just got home and couldn't help but watch you struggle." "A decent person wouldn't just watch," I muttered, and Eric raised an eyebrow. "What do you think I'm doing, Mary?" My cheeks burned, but I refused to give him the satisfaction of knowing he'd gotten to me. I honestly couldn't help it. Everything I did or said around Eric these days seemed to be wrong. "I'm fine. I'll just wait for my parents to get home." "Let me take a look, please." He patted the side of the car. "I promise I won't hurt your precious baby." I rolled my eyes, but it was cold outside and I wanted to get inside and start on my homework. My parents might not be home for another hour or more. "Fine, but if you so much as scratch her, you'll pay for it." Was that a threat? I got out to help him and shook my head. "A literal statement. You will literally hand over the cash to pay for it." "Ah." We walked around the car in silence until we got to the passenger side front wheel, and Eric made a small noise. "Flat tire. Looks like you ran over something sharp, but the tire's pretty old anyway, so they'll probably just have you replace it." I nodded. "Thanks for figuring it out." I grabbed my backpack from the car, locked it, and turned towards my house, but he stopped me. "One last thing. My guess is that the tire places in town aren't going to have this specific kind of tire. They'll probably have to order it from somewhere, and it might take a bit for it to get here." I bit my lip as I realized what he was saying. "You're going to be carless for the next few days, maybe a week or so. If you need a ride," he motioned towards his car, "just let me know." Like I would ever ask for a ride from him in a million years. "Thanks." We go to the same school and live next door to each other, Mary. It would be silly to refuse. Then call me silly, I mumbled as I headed inside without a backwards glance. The excitement I'd felt from receiving another note and leaving another reply had pretty much faded and been replaced by irritation. Who did Eric think he was to act so seemingly nice and helpful around me after all he'd done? My parents still had some pictures lying around from all those years we'd played together as kids. I think they even had a picture of our pretend wedding. God help me. But I had wanted nothing more than to forget all about the boy next door after the first few weeks of freshman year. I'd entered high school ready for our friend group of Eric, Jess, and me to remain the same. But on the very first day of school, Eric had sat with a group of boys at lunch and then proceeded to ignore me completely when I went over to ask him why he wasn't sitting with Jess and me. I tried to hide my disappointment, but I'll admit that several tears were spilled that night. The next day, I'd confronted him about it, and he'd flat out told me that he had new friends now and didn't need any friends who were girls anymore. For the next 3.5 years, the only times we'd spoken had been when Eric or his friends had made fun of me for reading or working at a library or even being a vegetarian. So it was safe to say that any friendly feelings I used to have toward Eric have disappeared long ago. When I finally got into the house, I made myself a cup of hot tea and started on my homework. Even though I just wanted to read, Mom got home about an hour later with the news that Dad's meeting had run late, but he'd hopefully be home soon. With both my parents professors in different departments at the local university, I'd grown up helping my mom grade papers and coming up with ideas for my dad's lectures. Bibliophiles themselves, they'd taught me to love books from an early age. I thought my mom would understand when I mentioned the car issue to her, but as soon as I said that Eric had offered to give me a ride, she jumped on it. That's a great idea. No, I can't. You know what he's done to me. It's probably only for a week, hon. I know you don't like him, but I think that might be your only option. But what about Jess? Maybe she could... Jess lives on the other side of town, Mary. Think about it. I wouldn't ask you to do this if there was another option, but he does live right next door. You're not going to inconvenience him since you'll be going to the same place. I sighed. I knew she was right, but that didn't mean I had to like it. Fine, 1 week. Mom pulled me in a hug. Thank you, sweetheart. It was only for a week, but I wondered if both of us would still be alive at the end of the week. Eric was outside my house 15 minutes before the time we had agreed on Monday morning. He honked, probably waking up the entire neighborhood, but I simply ignored him and continued getting ready. 15 minutes and 2 more honks later, I climbed into his car. You're late, he said in lieu of good morning. You're early, I replied. Didn't anyone ever tell you that being early is on time and being on time is late? Actually, I've heard that. Didn't anyone ever tell you that honking is rude? He glared at me, but started the car anyway. I rubbed my hands together and pulled my jacket tighter around me, waiting for the heat in his car to start working. Eric's car was what he would probably call a classic, but what I called classically frustrating. He didn't even have a CD player, for goodness sake. We were silent for the first part of the ride, which was fine with me because I didn't really want to talk at all. What do you even say to the boy who used to be your best friend before he became your enemy? How's work? He finally asked. I glanced over in surprise. Work? You mean my job at the library that you've made fun of me for mercilessly for the past 3.5 years? He grimaced but kept his eyes on the road. Yes, that. I shrugged. It's fine. There was no way I was going to tell him about the notes. Read any good books lately? Do you actually care? He stopped at a red light and took the chance to look over at me. Yes, I care, Mary. I never stopped caring. He gestured like that explained everything and started driving when the light turned green. That was news to me, but he was definitely not getting off the hook that easily. How's your brother? I asked quietly. Eric snorted. Blake is as popular as ever. But you would know, wouldn't you? I see the looks you give him. I don't have a crush on him, if that's what you're implying. I definitely did have a crush on his twin, but Eric didn't need to know that. Oh, look, we're here. Thanks for the ride. He pulled into a parking space in front of the school, and I opened the door. Mary, wait. You never answered my question. I paused. Why do you want to know, Eric? Are you just going to make fun of me? Because I don't want to give you any more ammunition. Goodness knows you already have enough of it from when we were little. No, I won't make fun of you. He scrubbed a hand over his eyes, and I glanced at my watch. We were going to be late if he didn't hurry up. I'm just curious, honest. Fine. I spouted off the title of the book in which I'd been leaving and receiving notes, and then spun on my heels and rushed into the school. Much to my displeasure, Eric was waiting for me after school. He'd also promised to give me a ride to the library, and then my dad would pick me up after work. We were completely silent during this ride, which was fine with me. At the library, I thanked him and was out of the car before he'd fully stopped. I was already a little late, and I wanted to check the book before starting my shift. Thankfully, there was another note inside, and I smiled as I read it. In the last note, I discovered that my mysterious correspondent was a boy, and our notes had started to get a little more personal. As I wrote my reply, I found myself smiling. At least some boys were still decent human beings. A little bit before the end of my shift, my dad texted me that he was still in a meeting and would be late. So when my shift finished, I decided to browse the shelves for a while. I had just turned the corner into my favorite section to check on the book. Maybe I could catch a glimpse of my correspondent, when I slammed into someone and fell backwards, dropping my armful of books. "I'm so sorry," a male voice said. "My fault," I answered. I wasn't looking where I was going, and I glanced up and the words abandoned me. "What are you doing here?" Eric held up the book in his arms. "Checking out a book." Only then did I realize what book he was holding, and my jaw dropped. "You recommended it, so I thought I'd check it out." "No!" I exclaimed, earning several death glares from patrons browsing the shelves. I wrenched the book away from him and hugged it tightly. There's something wrong with this copy. It's not able to get checked out until we fix it." He raised an eyebrow. "Really? Weird. Well, are there any other good books I should check out?" I gathered up my own pile and then looked up in surprise. "You actually like to read? I thought you were only humoring me." He scuffed the ground with his shoe and wouldn't meet my eyes. "Yeah, I actually kind of love reading. I'm sorry for making fun of you for it. Not my idea, trust me." I stared at him. Surprisingly, I was pretty sure he was being honest. I'd never heard him be so vulnerable before. "Here." I handed him the book on the top of my pile. "This one sounds really good. Why don't you read it first, and then I'll read it, and then we can talk about it. Kind of like a two-person book club." He stared at the cover for a second and then read the description on the inside cover, while I quickly reshelved the book with my note inside. When I returned, he said, "Okay, it does sound good. Thank you, Mary." We made our way over to the circulation desk where another staff member, Anna, checked our books out for us. "By the way, why are you still here? I thought your shift ends at 6. "My dad's running late." I knew what he was going to say before the words were even out of his mouth. "Want a ride?" I hesitated only for a second before nodding. "Okay, thanks." And as I followed him to his car, I had to admit that something definitely felt different between us. Every day that week, Eric gave me a ride to school, to work, and home. One day he even stayed at the library for the entirety of my shift, reading in one of the super cozy chairs by the window. We started talking about books during the rides, and once we got started, it was hard for us to stop. It felt like part of me had been damned shut for almost 4 years, but now that dam had broken. The words just kept flowing. The notes also kept coming, and my conversations with my mysterious correspondent were fun and sweet and always made me smile. I felt myself opening up to not just one, but 2 boys. When I confided in Jess, she just smiles. "What?" I asked. "Nothing. It's just nice to see you truly happy again." On Thursday, I found out that Anna was moving away and her position at the library was opening up. When Eric mentioned on Friday that he would love to work surrounded by books, I couldn't stop myself. Not that I really wanted to anymore. "Actually, a position at the library just opened. Maybe you should apply." Eric's face lit up, and he glanced over at me. "Really? You're not just joking?" "I would never joke about that. I'm serious, Eric. You'd be a great asset to the library, and it'd be fun to work with you." He grinned. "Okay, I'll do it. I'll apply." I couldn't keep the grin off my face. To both my surprise and happiness, Eric's interview at the library was scheduled for Tuesday. That weekend, we found out that the tire would be in on Tuesday, and my dad volunteered to take my car to the tire place and get it changed for me. "Ready for the semester to be over?" Eric asked when I got into his car Tuesday morning. Wednesday was our last day of the semester, and it would culminate in a celebration called the Winter Dance. I had never been to the dance before, and that probably wasn't going to change this year. Still, I was looking forward to all the extra reading time I'd have during winter break. "Yeah, for sure," I answered. "How are you feeling about your interview?" "I think I'm ready." When he didn't start the car, I glanced over at him. "Are we waiting for something?" "Not something," Eric muttered, and a second later I discovered who we were waiting for. Let's get this party rolling, Eric's twin Blake crowed as he launched himself into the back seat. Blake's car's in the shop, Eric told me as he finally started the car, so I offered him a ride. Blake chuckled. That's what you call the 30-minute argument last night? He looked at me. Eric didn't want to share you today. I opened and closed my mouth a couple of times, doing a startlingly good impression of a fish. I hadn't expected to be so close to the Blake Curtis today, and as I felt his eyes on me, I realized that I was not dressed at all appropriately to be stared at. Oh, I got out. I kicked myself for not being more eloquent, but Blake only laughed. Quite a talker you've got here, Eric. I can see why you like her. Eric just shook his head and wouldn't meet my eyes. It turned out that I didn't need to talk on the ride to school, and neither did Eric. Blake talked plenty for the three of us. I found out much more than I ever wanted to know about his thoughts about the people in our grade. Those he thought were hot, I was not on his list. Those who definitely weren't hot, I wasn't on this list either. And why he should get an A in chemistry, even though he didn't turn in his final paper. Throughout the conversation, I kept trying to catch Eric's eye, but he stared straight ahead the whole time. When we finally got to school, Blake hopped out first and opened my door, bowing low. "M'lady." I wasn't the biggest fan of chivalry. I can open my own door, thank you very much. But I got out and thanked him anyway. "See you after school," I told Eric. And as I walked away, I heard Blake ask, "What's happening after school?" I guess Eric must have told his brother what was happening after school, because when I got to his car after my last final, Blake was already there. "I didn't know my brother was into books," Blake said, clapping Eric on the back. "Good for you, dude." "Thanks," Eric muttered. Blake once again monopolized the conversation on the ride to the library, but when we got there, I pulled Eric aside. "You're gonna do great. How could they not want a book lover like you?" He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I hope you're right." I didn't get a chance to check the book right away because as soon as we got inside, Jess frantically waved me over to the desk. "We just got a ton of books in from that lady who brings a literal suitcase, so Sam wants me to shelve and you to work the desk as she's conducting Eric's interview." I glanced toward the section with the book, but nodded anyway. "Okay." By the time Jess finished shelving, Eric wasn't done yet. I bit my lip and glanced toward my favorite section again, and Jess rolled her eyes. "Go, check it, hurry." "Thanks, Jess." Surprisingly, my note from the day before was still in the book. That had never happened before, but maybe my mysterious correspondent hadn't had a chance to check it yet either. As I turned away from the book and started towards the desk, I slammed into someone. "Sorry," I said, and for a second I thought it was Eric I'd bumped into. I blinked again and the features shifted slightly. "Not a problem," Blake said, pulling me to my feet. "It's not every day you run into a hot girl." So he did think I was in that category. With his fingers on me, my brain couldn't seem to form words, but Blake didn't mind. "I think Eric is almost done," he winked. "Get that pretty butt back to the desk before you get in trouble." Pretty butt? I wanted to snap that he had no right to talk to me like that, but as I turned away, I realized exactly why Blake was in this aisle in the first place. Without even looking at me again, Blake casually pulled my book from the shelf, retrieved my note, and slipped another piece of paper inside. My eyes widened, and now I did hurry back to the desk before he could turn and see me standing there. It had been Blake all along. I should have been happy. I'd had a crush on Blake for years, and now here he was, undeniable proof that he returned my feelings. So why did I feel so empty inside? Why did a part of me wish it had been a boy with very similar features, but a different name? I had to say something. All the things we'd written to each other, and now that I knew who owned the pen, I had to do something about it. A plan started to form in my mind, and I nodded to myself as I returned to the desk. I'd confront him about it tomorrow, and then ask him to the winter dance. After all the secrets we shared with each other, how could he refuse? Eric's interview ended right before my shift did, but I didn't get a chance to ask him about it because my dad picked me up in my car, new tire and all. As I drove us home, I realized that I had never actually gone back and checked Blake's note in the book. I guess it didn't matter anymore now that I knew who was leaving them, but a tiny part of me wished I had at least read it. The next morning, I got up the courage and knocked on the Curtis's door a little bit before Eric and I had been meeting this past week. Blake opened the door about a minute later and looked my unusually, for me, fancy outfit up and down. "Good morning, sweetheart," he said. "What can I do for you?" "Is your car still in the shop?" I blurted. "I can drive you to school this morning if you'd like." He raised an eyebrow and then nodded. "Sure, let me just grab my backpack." Once again, Blake talked the entire way to school. It wasn't until I parked in a slightly secluded corner of the school parking lot that I suddenly realized I was alone in a car with Blake Curtis, something I'd been dreaming about for a couple of years. Only now that my dream was becoming reality, it was a lot less pleasant than I'd thought. For one thing, Blake smelled very strongly of some kind of cologne, and I knew my car would smell like it now for at least a few days. Blake started to get out, but I grabbed his arm. Wait, I wanted to ask you something. He shrugged and got back in. Yeah? I wiped my palms on my dress and tried to control my furiously pounding heart and the wasps in my stomach. I saw you yesterday at the library. Yeah, I know. We drove there together. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. He was not making this easy. No, I know that. I mean, I saw you do it. I saw you leave the note. After a tortured second of silence, he simply nodded. Go on. I said the rest in a rush to just get it over with. I'm sure you know, but I'm the other person writing those notes, and I've really enjoyed our conversations. So, would you like to go to the winter dance with me? We can continue our conversation there. I held my breath and watched his face. If he was like any of the suitors from any of the romance novels I loved, he would break into a grin and pull me into a kiss right here in the school parking lot, where anyone could see. He would confess how he'd secretly had feelings for me since we were little kids, and how he was so happy that I'd finally figured out, and that we could definitely make a long-distance relationship work after we both graduated in May and went to our colleges hundreds of miles away from each other. He would say that it didn't matter how far apart we are because I would always be in his heart. But before any of that could happen, my phone chimed with a text. I didn't mean to glance at it, but it was sitting between us on top of the console. Eric, hey Mary, can we talk? I looked back up at Blake. Why wasn't he saying anything? After another second, Blake did the one thing I had simultaneously not been expecting and also absolutely dreading. He burst out laughing. Me? You're asking me to winter dance? Sweetheart, I don't do dates. I dance with all the hottest girls at the dance, and that, fortunately, does not include you. And as for the notes, yeah, I was leaving them, but it was all Eric's idea. He thought it'd be hilarious to leave you notes in a library book and see how long we could string you along. We wrote them together, and all our friends gave suggestions. He looked me up and down again and shook his head. I don't know what you're trying to do in this ugly outfit of yours, but it won't work. Who would ever legitimately want to go out with you? My jaw dropped. You're serious? He snorted. Of course I am. I wasn't lost for words anymore. Get out of my car. He raised an eyebrow. Get out before I make you. I carry pepper spray and I'm not afraid to use it. Geez, I'm going. He got out and turned back one last time. Thanks for being the butt of the best joke of the year. Then he slammed the door and strode away without looking back, which was probably a good thing because 1 minute later I burst into tears. I don't like that. 15 minutes after that horribly embarrassing incident, I found myself in a corner of the library, trying not to cry for fear of scaring the patrons, but not really stopping the few tears that kept sliding out. I couldn't bear going to school, and besides, I'd finished my last final the day before. My phone chimed with another text, and I glanced at it. Eric, you're not in class, are you okay? What hurt the worst, even more than Blake's cruel words, was Eric's betrayal. All those rides, all those conversations, I thought I'd actually been starting to understand him. I thought we were starting to get back to where our friendship had been before high school. I thought we'd maybe even started to chart new territory in our relationship. And it turned out that it was all a lie. Before I could think better of it, I typed, Mary, congratulations, you won. I believed you hook, line, and sinker. Glad I could assist you with the best joke of the year. Now you can get back to hating books like you did before. Mary, never talk to me again. Eric, wait, what? Mary, what happened? I didn't dignify that with a response and blocked his number instead. I just wanted the whole world to leave me alone and let me cry in peace. After 1 p.m., I got hungry enough that I decided to go home. After I'd filled up on junk food, I curled up in my bed and finally opened Jess's stream of messages, begging me to tell her what had happened. Instead of typing it all out, I called her. Please talk to me, she said when she picked up on the first ring. I grabbed a box of tissues for the fresh wave of tears, and the entire story spilled out. When I finished, Jess immediately said, forget the dance, I'm coming over tonight. No, you can't. I don't want you to miss out on your date with Sarah. You had the whole romantic evening planned. She'll understand. No, Jess, please don't. You can come over tomorrow, but I want you to enjoy tonight. How can I enjoy it when I know my best friend is upset? You can spill punch on Blake and Eric, that's how, then send me a picture. She paused, which was not the reaction I was expecting. I don't think Eric is going tonight. He didn't look too good today, and I think he left early, after what looked like a fight with his brother. Of course he'll go, and of course he and Blake will make up, and even if he doesn't go, still spill punch on Blake. Heck, I wouldn't mind if you punched Blake, but do it discreetly. I don't want you to get in trouble for me. I'll figure something out. You're sure you're okay without me? I'm fine. I'll wallow in my giant tub of ice cream. See you tomorrow, Jess. Bye, love. And true to my word, I went down to the freezer, pulled out the biggest tub of ice cream we had, and I got a spoon. The analog clock on my wall, old-fashioned I know, chimed 8 times, and I sighed. 8 o'clock. The winter dance would just be starting. Throngs of people dressed in outfits that pushed the dress code, crowding into the school gym to dance too close together and drink too much punch. Blake would apparently be dancing with all the hot girls, and despite what Jess had said about Eric, he'd probably be dancing with all the hot girls too. He'd certainly never be dancing with me. And that was where the pain in my heart lay. In my hours of wallowing, I'd finally figured out why I hadn't been as thrilled as I thought I'd be with discovering Blake was behind the notes. Because somehow, in a week of car rides and conversations, Eric had wormed his way into my heart like the bookworm I thought he was. It also had to do with the fact that Blake was a sexist pig. Eric probably didn't even like reading. When I thought he was interviewing with Sam, he'd probably just climbed out a window to wait for his brother and have a good laugh at my expense. What if Blake said was true? Then why would Eric want to work with me? Why would Eric want to do anything with me? Outside, a car horn honked, and I jumped in surprise, nearly toppling off my bed. Probably some jerk who just wanted to annoy the whole neighborhood. A minute later, it honked again. Suspicious, I peered out my window and saw a person shrouded in darkness waving up at me. "No, Jess, you shouldn't have come," I muttered. I grabbed a jacket and ran downstairs, already rehearsing the speech I was going to give Jess about how much I loved and appreciated her, but how she needed to spend time with her girlfriend too. I pulled open the door and my jaw dropped. Hi," Eric said. If my brain had been functioning properly, I would have slammed the door in his face. As it was, I managed to connect enough synapses to scowl and grab the doorknob. "No, wait." Eric reached out and shoved something at me. "I brought something for you." I only stopped because I immediately recognized what it was he was forcing upon me. "Did you steal that from the library?" I took the book from him and held it gently, as if it might bite me. "Of course not. I bought a copy. Open it." I looked up into his eyes, trying to figure out if this was just another trick, or if he was being sincere. "Please, Mary, just open it, and then I'll explain everything." I bit my lip and then opened the book. To the girl who taught me that you can't judge a book by its cover. Cliché, I know, but you make me want to spout clichés and read every book you recommend and write cheesy poetry. Don't worry, I'll spare you. This past week has been amazing, and I'll tell you why. But first, I want to formally apologize. I'm so sorry for what happened freshman year. I regret what I said and did every time I see you walk out your front door or hang out with Jess or read under the circulation desk at the library. I hope you can forgive me someday. Now, about this week, it was amazing because of you. I can't tell you how many times I've wanted to discuss books with you or spend time with you or even just talk to you, and I'm so thankful I happened to be there to help you with your flat tire. In case I haven't made it clear, I sent the notes. Not Blake, and definitely not as a joke. I would never joke about something like that. That's the other reason this week was amazing. Not only did I get to spend time with you in the car every single day, I also got to have deep and meaningful conversations through a book. You are amazing, Muriella McKinsley, and don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. I love words, but I don't think I can even find the words to describe how I feel about you. You make me happy every time I see you, and when we talk, I never want to stop. Thank you for being you in a world that doesn't appreciate that. You've inspired me more than you ever could know. I look forward to all the adventures, fictional and real, that we can have together from now on. Sincerely, someone who doesn't know what life would be without you in it. It was written in permanent ink on the inside cover. Permanent ink, which meant that he didn't think his feelings for me would change anytime soon. I looked up at him, and I was surprised to find that my eyes were a little misty. Well, he said, his voice cracking just a little. Say something. Instead, I dropped the book and threw my arms around him. My lips met his in a fiery explosion, and it just felt right. Thank you so much, I whispered in his ear a few seconds later. I'm so sorry for my mean text today and for believing Blake over you. Eric pulled away first, but only so he could look me in the eye. Blake and I had a long discussion. I only asked him to put my note in the book because I hadn't had a chance to write back yet, and I knew I was going to be busy with the interview. When you confronted him about it and asked him to the dance, I think he reacted the way he did because he was jealous. It's definitely not an excuse for what he said, but it's the truth. Why did your interview take so long anyway? He grinned. Because I got the job. Apparently a certain staff member had been gushing compliments, and after she realized that I fit all the qualifications for the position, she offered me the job on the spot. It took so long because we were filling out tons of paperwork. I squeezed his hand, and a matching grin found its way onto my face. Congratulations, coworker. I can't wait to work with you. Eric's lips quirked, and he bent down for another kiss. In more ways than one, he murmured. When we pulled apart, he glanced at his watch. Speaking of which, would you like to go to the dance with me? There should still be enough time for a couple of slow dances. Oh, absolutely, I replied. But what if we stayed in and read together instead? Slowly, he started to smile. I like how you think. If that's what you want, then let's do it. I carefully picked up the book from the ground and ran my hand over the cover. Can you believe this all happened because of a book? He took my hand and threaded our fingers together. Of course. Books are full of magic. Then, hand in hand, we went inside together with the book that had started it all, clutched close to my heart. Oh, I wanted to punch his brother. So what did you guys think of the story? Did you like it? Did you not? Comment down below and let me know. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a big thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos like this, click that subscribe button down below. And until next time, remember to always be completely you. Bye!